Hi, my name's Julie, and I'm going to be talking today about how Native Americans are misappropriated and discriminated through movies, TVs, and music. Today, Native Americans are viewed as these human beings who have lived on our land and are, fighting back, and a lot of people agree and want to be activists with them, but a lot of people disagree. And I feel that throughout our time and our culture, that disagreement has really been shown through these movies and through music and through TV shows about how people view Native Americans. And so I believe that a culture that respects everything, including land, including other people, never get the respect that they deserve themselves. And so Native Americans have been shown to be savages, they've been shown to be brutal or unintelligent and just absolutely treated as if they're animals rather than human beings. And I believe that this is a big reason from movies. Movies have been a big reason, and their music and the way that they're portrayed through today's society. And so one of the ways that Native Americans have been degraded and discriminated is through singing red face. And so what singing red face is, it's an American or a white person or somebody who's not of Native American descent dresses up as a Native American and pretends to be one in order to entertain or to sing or to act or to do something to entertain others. And so singing red face has become one of the most common ways to degrade Native Americans and their culture and everything that they stand for. So the act of singing and dancing and acting as Native Americans has really started to show others like how we view Native Americans and the way that we see them. And so one of the main ways that they do that is through their costumes. And so another way that they show this is through headdresses. And headdresses have become such a big imagery for Native Americans, when in reality, not all tribes wore headdresses, and it's actually a very spiritual thing for some tribes to have a headdress. It's their warriors, it's the people who fought for their people, not just a costume. Another example are feathered headbands, and headbands were actually not even a Native American thing. Like, no tribe ever wore one. This was created from Hollywood to make sure that the singing red face actors could keep their wigs on. And so another thing are those braids. They wear these wigs that have these nice long braids because that's what they view Native Americans as having long dark hair braided, and it's put up in this eccentric hairstyle, when really it wasn't. And even if it was just their culture, it was their way of life, and just portraying that in any other sense is just wrong. And so an example of the singing red face is a British Columbian opera, and it's called The Lake. And they had people dressing up as Native Americans to portray themselves into this sense of being a Native American, and having the headdresses and the headbands and the clothing and the moccasin clothing. And so that's wrong, and you're just really blending in every tribe when you're doing singing red face, rather than showing that there are different tribes and that there are different clothing for these different tribes. Everyone just becomes these traditional Plains Indians, and so that's not right, and that's not portraying this culture, and that's not showing this culture off as something that is different and unique, but rather it's non-original, and it's just the same thing. And so that's definitely one way that people have been discriminating Native Americans, is through singing red face. And it just replaces the truth with this made up fantasy and these made up people that the Native Americans aren't even in real life. And so singing red face has just become one of the most common ways to degrade Native Americans. Another Native American issue that people have had portraying them is the idealized sympathy. And so idealized sympathy is when somebody is trying to sympathize with Native Americans and trying to be there for them, but in reality, they're hurting the race, they're hurting Native Americans. And so an example that I believe I kind of hold dear to my heart is, I get really bothered when people say, well, I'm 1/64th Native American, and so I know how you're feeling. But in reality, 1/64th is minute. There's people who are direct descendants who, like, their ancestors had felt the pain, they had felt the suffering, and now they're watching other people think, oh, well, I'm a Native American too, because somewhere in my ancestors there's Native American, and that's wrong. You can't do that. You can't just say that, because there's people who actually experience this pain and suffering. And so I believe that, idealized sympathy, it's exactly, that's idealized. It's just not, it's not true. You can't sympathize like that. Cultural misappropriation has become a huge thing in our society. The biggest example are when males or females wear feathered headdresses to music festivals because it is fashion. So cultural misappropriation is when a larger majority culture takes things away from a minority culture. And so an example of this for the Native Americans is that headdress. Again, exemplifying that it's this fashion and it's so nice for people to wear this, and it's cute or it's hip, but really you're taking somebody's culture and you're abusing it for your own vanity. And Native Americans view that as, an attack. It's offensive, because I'm sure many of their ancestors had worn some. Like, you don't do that. Many of our warriors have died in headdresses and have fought for their people. And we have people that wear them to music festivals just to look cool and to feel cool and to feel like they have a sense of fashion. And so cultural confusion comes into play with this, because now Native Americans are trying to diverge themselves into the American society, that the American society then confuses, each individual into kind of forgetting their own culture and into, forgetting their languages, forgetting everything, just because they've been so accepted into the American society that we push our values, we push our morals, we push our culture onto them. And so an example is just when Native Americans don't know their own language anymore, or they don't dress up the way that they would in their tribe. Instead they wear, the American clothes, they wear what's hip and what's new in fashion, and that's just forgetting your culture and being confused about it. And so another issue is playing Indian, and playing Indian has become one of the biggest issues for children, because when you grow up playing cowboys and Indians, and you always have somebody being a cowboy and you always have people being the Indians. And this just instills that there is a difference, that there is a hero and there is a villain, and the hero is always the cowboy and the villain is always the Indian, and the game is not victorious unless the cowboys kill the Indians. And that's just instilling an entire different viewpoint for these children, for Native Americans, because when they see a Native American, they're going to think an Indian, and they're going to think about their games, and they're going to think, I would rather be a cowboy than be an Indian. And again, that's instilling that in the Native American children as well, because when they think, I'm the villain, then how is that going to help them grow up to appreciate their culture? And again, going into that cultural confusion. So we have children playing Indian and pretending to be these Native Americans, pretending to be savage, pretending to be brutal and grunting and these, animals, rather than just being humans. Why are we making them playing Indians? Why are we playing them as if they're some character, as if they're not real people? And so that's a big issue in today's society, that, we're playing Indian. And so Native Americans aren't the only ones who feel this. We talked about blackface as well. And then what blackface is the same thing. White people literally painting themselves black to look African American. And there's our shows, blackface minstrelsy. And what this is these are shows where, back in the day, one of the famous, Thomas Dartmouth, he was one of the kings. He was the father of blackface, and he would use this for comedy. He would use this for entertainment, and he would have people laughing at him or enjoying his shows, but he was painted black the entire time, mimicking and mocking Native Americans, or African Americans, I'm sorry. And so he would just mimic these African Americans by painting his body black. And so these type of things, these type of portrayals are what's, causing this hatred in our nation, because we're portraying different cultures, but we're not embracing our own while respecting everybody else. And so a way that this is portrayed in movies is by Peter Pan, a Disney movie intended for children, mind you. And so this Disney movie is portraying Native Americans as savages, as these, these people from Neverland, and their fantasy, and they're just savages and they're crazy and they have their own way of life. And so it starts off with the Lost Boys, and this is the first part where we see Disney skewing off into that kind of racist, kind of discrimination tendency. And so what they're doing is they call these Lost Boys part of the Pickaninny tribe. And what Pickaninny means is it's a derogatory term for African American children. And it's just kind of showing off that like savage, that like wild view of these children. Well, when the Lost Boys save Tiger Lily, one of the Native American princesses, they take her back to her father, Chief Great Big Little Panther, in which they already are showing a derogatoriness towards his name, Chief Great Big Little Panther. That's, you know, teasing that like Native American name, as many of them have with their spirit animals, or, you know, their culture. That's their culture, that's how they come up with their names. And so they take Tiger Lily back to her father, and when they do, he wants to initiate Peter Pan and the Lost Boys into their tribe. And the way that he does that is he speaks in Tonto speak, and he's brutal, and he's, you know, he's a big guy, and he's red, and he has a big nose, and he has the big headdress, and he talks to them and gives them headdresses, and then gives them a peace pipe to smoke out of. And so Peter Pan takes this, and he, you know, he's initiated, and while they're showing them getting initiated, they're singing "What Makes the Red Man Red," and so that alone is just, you know, why are we talking about this? You know, why are we showing our children this? Why are children accepting that what makes a red man red? So now we're showing that Native Americans are only known as red men. And so this is then being sung over a series of scenes being showed where the Native American women are submissive to the Native American men, and they do whatever the Native American men want. And the Native American men are skinny and small, and they're just singing, and they're just having fun, and they're partying, and there's nothing significant about what they're doing. And so now Native Americans watch this movie, and they feel as though their culture is being viewed as weak or insignificant or even dumb. Native American children are watching this, and they don't feel proud about their culture. Instead, they feel embarrassed, and they feel like they would rather be on you know, on the Peter Pan side, rather than on the Native American side. And so Native Americans have been always disrespected, and they have always been viewed as the enemy to the Americans. So overall, there's no reason for them to be treated like animals, and they need to be treated like human beings, because that's what they are. With the portrayals of Native Americans in movies, music, TV, they're always going to be viewed as less than human beings. Native American children are going to grow up thinking that their own culture is bad and will want nothing to do with it. And they're going to conform to the American society, and they're going to forget their own culture due to that cultural confusion. If this continues, there's no longer going to be a Native American culture. They're going to forget their things. They're going to be ashamed. They're going to feel embarrassed. And that's why we need to fight to ensure that this unfairness is no longer there. We need to stop making them the enemy and realize that they were here before anybody else, and that this is their land, and their culture and their music does have meaning. It does have significance. And that's what I believe that today's society, today's American popular culture, today's music, today's movies, today's TVs have shown as a portrayal of Native Americans. And I believe that if we just embrace our own culture while respecting everybody else's, we're going to be fine. But if we do not, we're going to continue really discriminating a lot of cultures, including the Native Americans. Thank you so much. It was awesome taking your class. My older sister took it when she came to OU, so she recommended it, and I'm really glad I got to do this. So have a great summer and a great fall semester.